Welcome back everyone to another episode of ASA Podcast. Before we begin, here are the topics we are going to discuss today. First thing, United States is negotiating separately with Canada and Mexico, raising serious questions about future of USMCA. The second topic for today is Canada has cancelled the joint Gordie Howe Bridge opening ceremony following the new US tariffs, which we'll examine later why this is more than a symbolic disagreement. There are some changes that are coming up with our program. With our podcast now. The major update that we have for you is our co-host Bharat. He is working on some other project and will be busy with that project for some time. United States is negotiating separately with Canada and Mexico. Why? Let's see why this would have happened, right? According to writers, United States is pursuing a separate trade discussions with Canada, Mexico, instead of negotiating with both partners as unified North American bloc. Reuters reports that Mexico has moved further, Reuters reports that Mexico has moved further in addressing U.S. demands, whereas Canada has yet to enter formal negotiations following the latest escalation. According to Reuters, again, United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer said that Washington wants to develop interim arrangements with Canada, Mexico, and by the end of 2026, and more complicated matters including automotive rules of origin, labor requirements, environmental standards may continue into 2027. USMCA remains legally active, but the US decision not to extend it for another 16 years means the agreement now faces annual reviews through 2036 unless the three countries reach a new agreement. The main question that we need to ask ourselves is, can Canada negotiate directly if Mexico reaches its own agreement with the United States first? Because this no longer is about one tariff list. North America continues operating as three-country economic system or becomes a collection of separate bilateral deals. Right? That is the major strategy. That is the question that we need to look into. Right? But now, why does this matter? We all know that Canadian manufacturing, automotive sector, agriculture, energy, logistics, and industrial sectors were all built around predictable access to US and Mexico or Mexican markets. Separate agreements now could create a different rules for vehicle content, for agriculture, access for agriculture products, labor standards, any customs procedures during transits, mainly tariffs exemptions, right? And mainly for the automotive, the vehicles, right? If Mexico receives favorable terms, what will happen if Mexico receives favorable terms with compared to Canada? Then the outcome might be that all the investment and production output could gradually go towards Mexican markets or Mexican operations. So this is a kind of a risk. I'm not saying that this will be a risk or this will become a risk, but this may be a risk for Canadian market. So what should the companies be doing now? So what kind of a planning should the businesses do in Canada? What kind of planning should Canadian businesses do now? They must take decisions ASAP, or I would say they must start taking or thinking about establishing new factories, equipment purchases, long-term plan. They must plan their long-term contracts. They must look out for supplier locations, product pricing, and mostly hiring of manpower. That is very important. According to Reuters, Prime Minister Mark Carney is facing a lot of pressure to defend Canadian industries without accepting an agreement that is viewed domestically as too weak. Mexico appears to have more room to make selected concessions, creating different political conditions for the two countries. Trade barriers can rise cost through more expensive imported components, duplicate production systems, customs delays, retaliatory tariffs, and reduced competition between markets, right? Not every product will become more expensive, and price effects may take some time, but anyways, reduce market competition. We should also remember that not all products will become more expensive. The price effects may take some time. So in all of this situation, who benefits more? Most probably, the most potential beneficiaries for this condition will be US companies that are receiving additional protection. First. Second thing, Mexico only if they secure the deal earlier, or if they have more favorable market access for their products. And any Canadian firm that already has diversified outside in North America, right? And custom specialists, logistic firms that are helping companies to organize their operations, right? And then any domestic suppliers capable of replacing affected imports. That's some suppliers are there. These are the limited opportunities that are inside of a broader uncertainty. Now, the major question that we need to ask now is who gets hurt more? Who will get hurt more? For Canada, I would say the biggest impact this will have will be on automotive, right? So auto parts and or manufacturing companies, export manufacturers, the farmers, logistics, trucking businesses, small companies that are supplying products to US customers or dealing directly with their US customers, or any Canadian sector that is largely dependent on one major plant that exports parts or components to US or United States. So the question I would ask, what should our viewers do with all this information? Whether the biggest thing as a financial advisor I would ask is whether I would ask you to think or consider asking yourself is whether you have emergency fund that covers you for at least 3 or 4 months for your essential expenses. As a licensed financial advisor, I would advise families not to assume that these trade disputes will disappear quickly, but I would suggest you to reduce, if you have any high interest debt, try to reduce them. Avoid any large discretionary commitments or spending when the household income depends on certain exposed industry. To conclude this topic, I would say Canada's greatest risk is not losing one negotiation, it is entering the negotiation without alternatives. And the trade agreement should not be considered as political achievements. They determine where the factories are built, how many people will be hired, how many jobs will create, and where will the investment goes, where all those investment will go. Let's assume if Mexico reaches a separate deal first with United States, then Canada may no longer be a negotiating part of the bloc. Canada may be negotiating from behind. We don't know. Canada cancelled the planned joint US and Canada opening celebration of Gordie Howe International Bridge following the announcement of new 50% tariffs from the United States. Canada will instead hold its own ceremony on 24th July. The bridge is still expected to open to traffic on July 27th. Approximately $4.4 billion was financed by Canada, and it is intended to improve the movement of people and commercial traffic between Windsor and Detroit. Canada plans to recover its cost through toll revenue. Now, if you look at why this matters, This is important because the bridge represents the cross-border manufacturing, infrastructure investment, long-term US and Canada integration, improving of tourism, improving freight movement or logistics, or improving transport facility. You can say that Canada built an additional trade connection as the trade or the political relationship between US and Canada is deteriorating. So the main question we should ask is, should Canada separate its infrastructure cooperation from political disputes, and or is the cancellation of this ceremony that necessary? And Canada need to send a signal that economic pressure has diplomatic consequences too, because it is political symbolism do matter during, I would say, political symbolism do matter during negotiations, any kind of negotiations. On the same way, there is another question that we need to ask is, cancelling this ceremony, does it bring any change in the tariffs condition? Cancelling the ceremony sends a strong message, but that symbolism cannot become a strategy, right? Or cannot be used as a strategy. Canada still needs a negotiated settlement, competitive industries, and strong trade alternatives. Okay, why is this bridge so important? Who benefits from that? The biggest sector in Canada, one of the biggest sector in Canada is automotive. So automotive manufacturers, trucking companies, most of the business in Detroit, both in Canada and US, right, in Windsor and Detroit, both the businesses, and then cross-border workers that are going and doing up and down or to and fro from US and Canada, and then tourism operators and consumers benefiting from more efficient goods movement. And now, finally, if we look at who will carry the risk for these business operations, for this bridge operation, it will be Canadian taxpayers. Any exporting businesses, if tariffs reduce the bridge traffic, then that is done. The communities near the border who are depending mostly on the cross-border commerce or cross-border transactions, and any small logistic or trucking companies, because if the tariffs increase, then obviously the traffic on the bridge will reduce, right? Ultimately reducing the toll and revenue on the bridge. Today's news show that Canada-US trade has moved beyond tariffs headline, and United States is negotiating separately with Canada and Mexico. Canada has cancelled a ceremony celebrating a bridge that is built to strengthen cross-border trade. Canada should not abandon the American relationship. Our geography, infrastructure, and decades of integrated production make that unrealistic. But Canada must stop confusing access with the security. Real security comes from leverage. Canadian intellectual property, Canadian businesses are capable of surviving outside of one market. The same applies to families. One income, one employer, high debt, no emergency savings. That creates the same vulnerability for the household at a household level. So dependence feels sufficient until the relationship changes. So as we always say, the best is yet to come, but only if we build alternatives before we need them. So now I would say thank you everyone for watching today's episode. We see that 74% of our viewers are not subscribed yet. Do consider subscribing, liking, and sharing our channel and the videos. Let us know where we went wrong. Let us know if there is any kind sort of improvement that we need to make. Let us know your opinions based on the topic that we discussed today. What do you think? What do you feel? What do you think might happen? How do you think we should prepare? Is there anything that we missed today while discussing? Please do consider writing in the comments, in the comment section. we will certainly respond to your comments, and we can start the discussion there in the comment section. Thank you everyone. Thank you very much for your time.